Hi, everyone. I just wanted to try this YouTube Live, which I've never actually used. I was on my Kajabi HIAI community, which I founded, which I also wanted to let you all know about. I haven't actually been on YouTube for quite a while. I started and set up a YouTube channel some years ago, and I'm just re-investigating the functionalities here. So let me know what's going on. So just to remind you, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Lizzie Lowenstein, founder of Investors in Learning, and I have in the last couple of months started a community called HIAI Collective, and that is a community where we investigate and explore the challenges and opportunities that AI brings us, but also very much underpinning the HI first focus. So in this world that we're living in, there are so many challenges that organizations have. And as an organizational psychologist, I've seen them for many, many years, such as the huge disengagement issue we have internationally. We have a huge communication issue internationally across businesses, siloed thinking, siloed information centers, siloed communications between departments, even within departments. Human beings on the whole are not such great communicators. Human beings on the whole need support to communicate effectively. We don't allow ourselves on the whole enough time to really get to the heart of communication, to think about how we are communicating, to take ourselves into a realm where we actually have the space to reflect on what does the receiver hear, what is the recipient understanding, and to double check that as well and make sure that we're on the same page. We tend to be, on the whole, I'm generalizing here, of course, it will vary depending on the leadership and how they create their businesses and the culture that they create, but it's all got to be done intentionally and by design. And usually, on average, this doesn't happen. So on the whole, people go into automatic mode when they're communicating, and there is not enough conscious, intentional design behind communication. And people tend to be task masters of their jobs. So people go into work and they are there to fulfill certain tasks, rather than thinking of themselves as a social being within their role and understanding the bigger picture of how their role fits in with other roles. I'm generalizing again. You might have a great team where everybody is very aware of how things work within the team. However, even the one team, then you've got to think about how is everybody perceiving that across the business. So the norm is there's not enough conversation, not enough awareness created so that people really understand what's going on. So we have a disengagement crisis, we have a communication crisis, and we have a lack of awareness from usually at the individual level of how their work fits in to the bigger picture with other people's jobs, maybe sometimes even people sitting next to you. People, I've seen this myself, I've experienced it, that the people even sitting in the same room don't know each other's job descriptions very well. So the actual level of awareness of how tasks interconnect, how processes interrelate, again, because there's not enough time being spent to really explore these factors. So individuals often work in silos with their tasks. That creates a lot of disengagement and really not a purpose-driven context. So we have a lot of, these are just some of the issues we have anyway in organizations as a whole on average. So today and since 2022, we have started the AI revolution. That's when ChatGPT really started escalating. And today, everyone is talking about AI. How do we implement AI into our organizations? It is taking the world by storm, as we know. It is escalating incredibly quickly, and yet we are still in ANI, artificial narrow intelligence. So Artificial narrow intelligence is about AI focusing on one specific area, yet learning that specific area incredibly well. So I saw a 60-minute podcast and program, and in it there was an example. The broadcaster was there in Google Minds headquarters, and they were training robots to play football. And it was a really good example, really hammered it home to me how this works. So if you're training actual robots to play football, they are learning the actual human behaviors, movements from humans. And then what the AI does, it learns far quicker than a human would, but then it generalizes those particular movements in order to achieve that one specific goal, which is in this case actually to score goals. And it does that incredibly well. But if you watch those two robots helping each other to score goals, it's phenomenal and amazing. But that's a really good way of understanding ANI, artificial narrow intelligence. It is focusing on that specific skill set. It then can't generalize across that skill set into other skill sets like a human mind would be able to. So we're currently in ANI, then we're going to AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, and then we're going to go to ASI, which is artificial super intelligence. Everybody is really, really worried about what that could bring. Stroke excited. It could be an amazing, successful revolution for the human beings, for humankind. However, it could also go absolutely tragically wrong. And so this is why we are now at a tipping point, and this is why I founded the HI AI community. Very important that way around. HI first. Now, as an organizational psychologist, obviously my focus is always the human being, the human psychology, and we know so much about psychology, and yet we apply so little. And organizational psychology is rich with research. So one of the things I'm doing on the HI AI Collective is sharing some of the research. And in fact, I was about to share an outline of the research which looks at the cognitive decline as a result of using AI. You may have heard this, it's an essay writing task. There were three groups. There was a Google group, like the traditional old-fashioned way of doing Google searches. There was a brain-only group, no tech, and then there was an AI group. And as you may guess, the AI-only group performed far less well on lots and lots of other creative thinking tasks, or even recalling their own writing tasks or exploring the actual content that they wrote, basically because they didn't engage with the content. It's not really that surprising. So the lack of critical thinking and the less critical thinking we apply, the less we're likely then, of course, to recall anything, because we didn't do that neural work. We didn't actually internalize. So it's exactly as you might expect. The Google group was a little bit in the middle, because actually you are still employing far more cognitive activity by searching certain things. And then the brain-only group showed the most memory recall, creative thinking, critical thinking, ability to actually take the subject and really critique it compared to the other two groups. But that is really just a summary. I've just been reading it, and I was going to put it on the HI AI Collective group, because we've already had a meetup today and looked at another study, which was the cognitive offloading study. But then I decided, wow, there is so much content in this particular article that I need to give this more time. I will quickly show you here the actual article. I hope you can see this. Yeah, so right, so I just wanted to show you really, just so that you've got some idea of the extent of this article. And I will literally just go through some aspects of it, because otherwise we will be here for hours. Okay. I might do a long, just really reach out to say, well, because I would really love you to join the AI Collective group if you would like to. It's a free community, and I'm trying to reach out to cross-sector leaders and intergenerational as well. This is absolutely a pivotal time for us to be learning together what AI is really doing to us in order to optimize, the way that we can use AI and make sure we know the way not to use it. So we have here this particular research study, Your Brain on ChatGPT, Accumulation of Cognitive Debt when using AI Assistant for essay writing tasks. In fact, its methodology, it also uses AI to assess the results, because this is a large study. Well, it's a large study in the sense of how they have, the sample size is not actually that large, but it is absolutely detailed. So this particular image shows us had EEG analysis, so electroencephalogram were wired up on their brains so they could see the brain activity, and it showed analysis of alpha band for groups. Large language model, search engine, brain only. So basically you have the ChatGPT, the AI, the search engine, moderately significant, highly significant. So you're showing the actual activity here. The abstract really gives us the overview of what this is about. So this study focuses on finding out the cognitive cost of using an LLM in the context of in the education context of writing an essay. Groups, we've already said that there were 3 sessions with the same group assignment for each participant. This is important. In the 4th session, we asked the LLM group, that's the AI group, participants to use no tools. Participants were then asked to use LLM, that was the brain to LLM, so that went round, and then we recruited a total of 54 participants for and one of them completed session 4. So they used EEG to record participants' brain activity in order to deeper understanding of neural activations during their essay writing task. Performed the NLP analysis and interviewed each participant after each session, performed scoring with the help from human teachers and an AI judge, which was a specially built AI agent. So what they discovered is consistent homogeneity across the named entities recognition, the n-grams, ontology of topics within each. That is really explained in detail in the methodology section and the results section. And it is, if you want to dig deeper, now what I've been saying in the AI Collective is that it is now, I believe, down to actually look in more depth at the research that's coming out. 2025 is a year where we have had a huge amount of research on the impact of AI on the brain. We've also had a huge amount of research on the impact of AI on mental health. And we are learning a lot every single month as there's new stuff coming out. And this won't reduce in volume. But what we know from many, many years is that there is a huge academic practitioner divide. And now is the time that I think we need to really harness this proactively with intent, and leaders need to take a responsibility to actually read some journal articles, the primary source material. Now, I understand, and I'm going to flick through this document in a moment. I'm sure you will agree with me that this is not about reading everything in depth. You just wouldn't have the time. However, even if you only read the abstract, a little bit of get a flavor of the methodology, get a flavor of the discussion section, the conclusion section. You already are far more soaked into primary source than you are when you're just reading a social media update about it and a couple of pictures, which does not give you in any way, shape, or form really the primary source data. And also, we don't know how much it might be misplacing the actual results. And you, as a leader, if you are a leader or a decision maker, I believe in today's day you have a responsibility to really exploit the utility of these amazing findings, to make sure that you are applying human intelligence first principles everything is showing us, and I'm jumping this straight to the conclusion because I'm assuming some of you will drop off. But please, whatever you go away with, HI first is so vitally important. Human intelligence, human critical thinking, human critical evaluation, the actual human judgment that we apply is so critical, and it's showing itself to be more and more critical. In fact, we need to become more critical thinkers than ever before because we have AI. So we can see here that, let's look at this sentence here. The reported ownership of LLM's group's essays in the interviews was low. The search engine group had strong ownership. The LLM group also fell behind in their ability to quote from the essays they wrote just minutes prior. So the LLM group fell behind in their ability to quote from the essays they wrote just minutes prior. Surprise, surprise, because they didn't actually write it, did they? ChatGPT wrote it, or another LLM wrote it. The educational impact of LLM use only begins to settle with the general population. In this study, we demonstrate the pressing matter of a likely decrease in learning skills based on the results of our study. The use of LLM had a measurable impact on participants, and while benefits were initially apparent, as we can demonstrate over the course of 4 months, the LLM group's participants performed worse than their counterparts in the brain-only group at all levels: neural, linguistic, and scoring. Okay, so this is really the highlight of this study. I hope this research serves as a preliminary guide to understanding the cognitive and practical impacts of AI on learning environments. So this is really the overview, this first page. This is the HI Collective. I've posted this there, so when you join free, you can get there, and there are meetups on a regular basis. So let's just quickly do a bit of a scroll through. We've got summary of results. It's huge, this research study. It's a whole index section here. We've got a review. They are very highly, in terms of source material, far more trustworthy than anything else we read, really. Once men turned their thinking over to machines in the hope that this would set them free, but that only permitted other men with machines to enslave them. 1965. Absolutely. Let us remember that. Do not want to become enslaved by our machines. We have a choice. HI first to be the driver and the driving force. So it goes on and on, and I will now use the scroller on the side here to take us out. As you can see, they have analysed they've got different modes, different subjects they were talking about: loyalty, philanthropy, art, enthusiasm, perfect choices, courage, forethought. They looked at ontology. They had the AI judge versus human teachers. They even show how they train the AI agent. So it's very, very detailed here. But as I said, we're not going to go through all of this because I'm just going to keep this brief. You can see the brain activities here to show you the extent of the detail here. Cognitive offloading to AI. Reports of cognitive offloading. Yes, those are cognitive offloading we looked at earlier by Galich in 2025, which basically means that we're not holding things in working memory, we are offloading tasks, which is basically what we're doing with any tech. Even when using a calculator, you're cognitively offloading. But here, of course, they are reliance on AI systems can lead to a passive approach and diminished activation of critical thinking skills. The person to perform tasks alone. In our context, the lower alpha connectivity in session 4 relative to sessions 2 and 3 could indicate less activation of top-down executive processes, such as consistent with the notion that the LLM had taken some of that burden earlier, leaving participants with weaker engagements of those networks. Absolutely makes sense, doesn't it? If you are practicing and using your neural networks, how should they be activated? So again, it does actually completely make sense. As I said, I'm just spot checking here, going through a few things, but really, if we work through to the conclusion, there's a whole discussion section which is great. That is, let's have a look. Yes, you've got quite a few as well, but let us move here to the end. The correlation between neural connectivity and behavioral quoting failure in LLMs group participants offers evidence that number one, early AI reliance may result in shallow encoding. That means you do not encode the information. So very, very simplistically, memory is made up of encoding, storage, and retrieval. So if you're not encoding properly, you're not storing it, so you can't retrieve it either. So shallow encoding means that you won't be able to store it or retrieve it. LLMs groups poor recall and incorrect quoting is a possible indicator that their earlier essays were not internally integrated, in other words, stored, likely due to outsourced content processing to the LLM. Yeah, it's not surprising, is it? You're not actually doing the work, you're just giving the title to the LLM. Secondly, withholding LLMs tools during early stages might support memory function. The brain-only group's stronger behavioral recall, supported by more robust EEG connectivity, suggests that initial unaided effort promoted durable memory traces, enabling more effective reactivation, even when LLM tools were introduced later. So that's interesting. So withholding LLM tools during early stages might support. So when you start with brain-only, have strong behavioral recall, and there was more robust EEG connectivity, so that was shown on the EEG. And so the initial unaided effort creates those deeper memory traces. So you've got encoding on a greater level, storage on a greater level, and therefore, when the LLM tools are used, it's described here as enabling more effective reactivation, which actually makes sense. So this is all about how we use AI, isn't it? It's not about not using AI. And AI is amazing. I mean, this particular study also used AI agents in the analysis of their results. You know, everybody recognizes that AI tools are very valuable. It's how we use it, it's how we scrutinize it, and it's about having the HI at the core. Human intelligence is what guides and activates artificial intelligence. If we use it in a sloppy way, we will be creating a future generation of young people who will cognitively offload tasks far too much, will become lazy. Very quickly, the cognitive offloading has actual neural effects. And also, we will see cognitive decline, as in the brain actually not working as strongly or as interconnectively as if we didn't have AI. So we need to use AI in a way that still stimulates critical thinking, that still stimulates our brain cells, that still ensures connectivity, and that is absolutely key. And it's also, you know, I think another big factor is we do not have the social side of working through AI, or in tech in general, unless we proactively, by design, encourage each other to really have conversations about things, which is why I also encourage these meetups. In business, in school, in any establishment where we have to continually learn, and continual learning is part of life. And in the leadership programs that I've designed called Mastering Human-Centered Courageous Learning Leadership, is learning leadership, because learning and leadership are two sides of the same coin. Every leader needs to embrace the concept of learning on a continuous basis. You will not be able to lead unless you're continually learning what's going on and updating yourself. That takes openness, that takes critical thinking, that takes a receptivity, that takes reflective thinking. You know, if you are too certain all the time, that paradox of certainty versus open reflectiveness means that you might then go into decision making far too quickly rather than staying open to learning. So it's that being aware of your own internal paradoxes, of how you might actually shut learning down, listening to people, having multiple perspectives, having a collective intelligence approach in your organization. There's so many factors that a leader needs to take into account. And you can only do that through the social side of things and through collaborative learning. And so my experience and the research is showing the norm, the average organisation does not have deliberate, intentional designed collaborative learning or collective intelligence systems. The average organisation focuses on process and outcomes and targets and getting products or services out of the door. It does not focus on the way that the employees are engaging with each other and learning with each other, and therefore your own cognitive processing and the interaction is limited in terms of what's going on with the thinking skills around your products and services. So we are really needing to step up that social thinking and feeling that if we become better internal collaborators, we become better. Reflection, support, and challenge. Those three things, those are areas that any coach will learn is vital. All three of those are vital to help people, managers, leaders to be engaged effectively with themselves and others, learning continually. And all of those things are being neglected by the massive attention. So all of this needs to be considered, and this research is really underpinning that had a strong behavioral recall, and then they were better at the LLM. The same thing is if you have a good collaborative learning skill, collaborative working skill, if you embed that in your organization, the culture is a coaching culture, it's peer support culture, peer supervision, for example, where people come with issues and people support each other to resolve these issues. If all those things are happening, then actually when you do use AI, humans are more engaged and more capable of being critical in that respect, and you will have a better framework, bedrock, foundation to build AI onto. However, if you are building AI onto an organization where it's an average situation, the norm, the majority of organizations are disconnected, there are huge amounts of disengagement and huge amounts of poor communication and a lack of inclusive leadership. In other words, a lack of systems that include people's voices and collective intelligence in understanding what's going on. So no intentional link between the people around the organization and the leadership. So these things usually don't hide. So my worry is there's a lack of real good critical thinking in organizations anyway. The larger the organization becomes, the more we proactively make sure the brain is primed, a good quality critical thinking approach is higher in the brain to LLM group. Again, same message. Brain only group might have mentally with tool generated suggestions as supported by their comments during the interviews, engaging in self-reflection and elaborate rehearsal, a process linked to semantic integration as seen in the EEG profile. This needs a little bit of deeper processing. I understand the language that's used here, but basically the metacognitive engagement is higher in the brain to LLM. The brain has already engaged with it independently, has scrutinized the details, and then when you put the AI on top, that brain will approach that content in a different way. So there is lots of useful information here, and perhaps one of the more concerning findings is that participants in the LLM to brain group repeatedly focus on a narrower set of ideas. This is the LLM to brain work, as Ngram analysis, see topics of courage, forethought, and perfect in figures 82 respectively, etc., and supported by interview responses. This repetition suggests that many participants may not have engaged deeply with topics or critically examined. Thing that we've said before, unless we practice, we do not develop a skill. We are animals that learn through practice, and then we create patterns, and the more we practice something, the more the patterns develop. The more we go to the gym, the more we develop those particular muscles that we're exercising in the gym. The more we develop critical thinking and we use critical thinking, the better we become at it. The more we communicate and do presentations and sit on a stage or talk on a stage, the easier it becomes, the better we become at it. It's the same with any skill. Practice makes perfect. practice creates patterns. The patterns can be our friends, but also can be a reason that we become constrained and biased and stereotyped. So we need to be aware of our patterns and not lean on them. And patterns can also make us make mistakes, and they can make us lazy. So our challenge is critical thinking. Critical thinkers can also be biased. Critical thinkers can also actually introduce bias. We're all open to the problem of our social conformity and our need to be liked, competent, and included, which then makes us maybe behave in ways that aren't particularly conducive to being critical, or maybe we have blind spots. Every single human walking this planet has blind spots. Again, that'll create more problems. So none of us are infallible. We are fallible humans. We have a human condition which makes us make a lot of mistakes on a regular basis, and we don't tend to openly give up, show our mistakes, because we have defense mechanisms, because we want to protect ourselves. So we have to teach ourselves to be critical thinkers more and more because of AI now. The other thing I was going to say is the ethical leadership side of things is becoming more and more important because of AI. So I'm hoping that now that we have AI, more people will wake up and actually say, well, because we have AI, we have a bigger duty to be accountable. We have a bigger duty to be ethical. We have a bigger duty to actually be so careful with our critical thinking and our HI first approach. So please do join our HI AI collective. And I will also be working far more in the accountability area in relation to leadership now going forward, because that explicit accountability that leaders need to task themselves to set their own accountability frameworks and governance processes. And they need to be creme de la creme. And leaders need to learn how to create governance frameworks themselves. And with the help of their non-exec directors maybe, or specialists in the area, but governance frameworks for accountability are not the norm. And we know this because of all the scandals we see, not just in the UK and in the US, but across the entire planet. We have so many organizational scandals, so many organizational failures, which are started by denial, secrecy, not being open, not exploring mistakes, having a blame culture. Basically, they are there because of the human condition. So the human condition, our human fallibilities, is something we all need to learn more and more, and we have a greater possibility now. Well, we have a greater possibility to learn, but we have a greater duty, because if we don't, we carry on just falling into our own human fallibility traps. What's going to happen is that this will be taught to AI, and we've got a greater chance of this now going out into the world and being applied in very dangerous ways. So thank you all very, very much for listening. I will be going on to YouTube more often. Please subscribe if you haven't yet subscribed. I haven't been very active on this channel, but I will do coming now forward. I'll post regularly. The other thing I wanted to say about this is that in any journal article, the reference section is just perfect. Look at this reference section. There is a lot of information, and there is a lot that is very, very recent. This particular study was 2020. Research articles in here are no older than 2020. I've only skimmed it, so apologies if, oh no, there's a 2016 there are 2015, 2011, sorry, so yeah. There are quite a few, there's 2024, 2008, so it's varied, which is of course also very reassuring, because we want historic analysis as well. But we're saying historic as in fairly recent history. So you can see a very, very comprehensive reference section, and then we have a big appendix. This is a very thorough piece of work, definitely worth having on your radar. Obviously, need to go into all the statistics and all this depth, but it's all there for you. And it just goes to show how there are so many people now really aware of and putting time into. We should really use this and make it relevant, give it utility, and hopefully make sure that this is going to really make a difference in our organisations. So I hope you found this interesting, and I wish you all the very best. Thank you for listening. All take care. Bye.